Okay, let me bring in Vivek Gupta of BMR Advisors. Vivek, you probably had to deal with the FIPB related issues quite a bit because of your clients who have been wanting to invest in India over the past 25 years. Beyond symbolism, as Mr. Virwani was just pointing out?
See, if there is any part of the bureaucracy that is not entirely useful, then I completely agree that that part of the bureaucracy should fall away. So in that sense, this is beyond symbolism and FIPB can be abolished. All that I would sound as a note of caution, though, is that over time, FIPB has emerged as a body which has been a nodal body in terms of coordination amongst different ministries of the government, and has pushed proposals, has been empowered to take decisions, sometimes even overriding objections raised by certain ministries, because you have a committee of secretaries who are empowered to doing that. The new mechanism must be a mechanism where the investor is not lost within various departments of the government, where files are not shuttling between Ministry of Pharma and Health Clearance, etc., etc. We must have still a coordination and a nodal mechanism. And if we have that, then I would welcome this move. If we don't have that, then I would wait to hold my view on this one to see how the new mechanism truly functions.
Well, hopefully in a few minutes from now, the Finance Minister will give us the details of what the new mechanism is likely to be. But Mr. Dua, coming back to you, sir, in terms of the fact that the FIPB acted as a single window clearance as the nodal ministry, but as the list of FDI-related matters that require government approval has come down quite significantly, in fact, a lot of FDI-related matters now just go through the automatic route. What would you believe is the best way forward now in terms of the new mechanism that the government ought to put in place?
I think you hit the nail, if I might say, nail on the head. Over 80% of the cases now did not need FIPB recommendation. And I'm using the word recommendation carefully because the approvals were still being accorded by the Finance Minister or the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs for larger value cases. The FIPB was essentially a recommendatory body. In fact, some aberrations have been reported and have caused a degree of, concern, consternation, because FIPB minutes itself were being put up to the Finance Minister for approval, even though he was never a member of the FIPB. So even the recommendatory body, to some extent, I would say, that role itself was being diluted. Having said that, my concern is twofold now. One, that the issues which are on the government approval route, which will now be dealt with by each line ministry, that should not mean procrastination or the ministries not taking a view on those decisions and instead passing the file around rather than these happening in a meeting, and then a decision was much quicker. Instead, here, as an example, was being given of pharmaceuticals, that the department, administrative ministry might be the Department of Pharmaceutical and in the Ministry of Petrochemicals and Fertilizers, but it could well happen that they will mark the file on or ask for the views of the Ministry of Health. That the issue may just bounce between the two ministries, a call may never be taken. So there would need to be. And then certainly, as you mentioned a little while ago, if a decision might also be that if it has security concerns, it might go to the Ministry of Home, it might go to the Foreign Ministry, it might go to the National Security Advisor, etc. FIPB to that extent has provided a particular forum, a particular place where all these points of view could be enunciated, and thereafter it would make the recommendation to the approval authorities. That is one of my fears, that if a power is being given or a role is being given to a ministry, it should exercise it, it should equip itself, it should do prior consultation with the possible ministries on how they would be viewing not different cases but different segments of industry, what is their point of view, do we want the Chinese investment to come in, for instance, in transmission of electricity or generation or not? That a general decision with the Ministry of Home, Ministry of External Affairs be taken beforehand, and then in individual cases be dealt with. Otherwise, it could well mean that we might be leaving a vacuum rather than expediting decision making.
Okay, just hang in there, Mr. Dua. Mr. Virmani is smiling. Mr. Virmani, you wanted to come in, sir?
Yeah, I am really intrigued because, we can't have it both ways. Either FIPB is a bureaucratic overload on the system and it should be abolished, or it's a essential element of the system and we should keep it. I mean, I think it's very, I am kind of little puzzled by both the previous speakers. You can't have it both ways. I mean, we have to decide, and that is why I emphasize the symbolic role. I think substantively it may not be, because there are positives and negatives, we know that. So really, but that symbolic significance remains, whatever the pros and cons of having this body or not. But I am less concerned about the problem. By the way, national security is a separate issue, and there will be a system. There have been reports in the papers about the issue of reciprocity, etc. Once there's a policy, that system has to be there. Every country in the world, including the US, has a system for national security clearance, and that has to be there. There is no question.
Okay. Our understanding at this point in time, and as I pointed out, we're waiting for the Finance Minister to give us details on the new mechanism, but our understanding is that it's going to be done through a common e-biz portal perhaps, and the line ministries will in that sense act as the facilitator. So for instance, the Defence Ministry will look after any proposal related to the defence sector, and if there are any other clearances required from ministries that need to give their approvals, it will be the responsibility of the Defence Ministry to ensure those clearances come in, but it will all follow the process of a common portal. Vivek Gupta, as Mr. Virmani was pointing out, we can't have it both ways. Either it's acted as a facilitator and hence needs to stay, or if it's a bureaucratic overhang, that it needs to go. But the process that I've just articulated very sketchily for you, do you believe that makes sense and that could be the best way forward?
See, my position on this is very simple, and it's been very consistent since the announcement was first made by Mr. Jaitley in February. As far as we see it, the FIPB has been very, very supportive under Mr. Dua and under a bunch of secretaries over time. FIPB has actually been supportive towards investment. Yes, it's always been a 6 to 12 week process, but it's been a supportive process within the government. However, and I still say the same thing, if FIPB must go because of the symbolism or whatever else it brings with it, then the government has to replace it with some sort of single window clearance. Don't send a pharma proposal, the company, to the Ministry of Health as well as to the Ministry of Home. Don't send a media proposal to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting and the Ministry of Home for all clearances. And the solution to that is, if you still don't want to have a FIPB type of empowered body, you could still have a secretariat within the DIPP, which could still act as a nodal body. That's my short point. So if given a choice, I would have said the FIPB is doing a great job. No problem with it. If for symbolism it must go, and because it sends out, as Mr. Virmani said, all the nice things about sending out good messages to foreign investors, etc. If it sends out a good message, by all means, that's good. But have a nodal body within your main ministry. DIPP has been the secretariat any which way. Let that act as a nodal body. Monitor it. Proposals must be cleared within a certain time frame as they used to be cleared under the FIPB regime. And then we are good to go. So I think my position on this has been very, very clear.
Right. So what we are again given to understand is that line ministries will have to take a call, will have the power to approve and reject. In case of any security clearances required, the line ministry will take that up with the Home Ministry. The existing framework where FDI of more than 5,000 crore rupees will have to go through the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs for approval. Let's go across to Rituparna Bhuyan. Ritu, just explain the contours of the new mechanism that is going to replace the FIPB.
Well, the fine print is not out yet, but the basic principle is this. You had an FIPB mechanism where you have to go and apply and then certain approvals. The new mechanism would be easier. That's what the sources involved with this particular proposal told us. Secondly, we have also been told that either line ministries or sectoral regulators, for example, you have IRDA for insurance or PFRDA for pension. So these sectoral regulators will be taking the final call on FDI-related proposals of their respective sectors. How will the companies apply? Well, the initial proposal that was moved talked about a common portal managed by DIPP, wherein a company will apply into that portal, and then that portal will send that particular proposal to that relevant line ministry, and then the line ministry will then propose the proposal. So this was the original mechanism that was proposed, and we understand that more or less in these same lines, the approval will be given in this new mechanism. But then again, in a short while from now, the FM will spell out the fine print of the alternative mechanism that will replace FIPB.
All right, Ritu, we'll keep coming back to you for more details, but let's just listen into the Economic Affairs Secretary Shaktikanta Das, who spoke with us about the FIPB being replaced, and this was an interview that we did with him just 24 hours ago. Here's what he had to say.
The Finance Ministry officials also recently met with the DIPP, and we believe some policy changes are being looked at as far as foreign direct investment is concerned. Could you share some of those developments with us?
You see, FDI policy review is a constant ongoing process, and from time to time, depending on the requirements of the economy, from time to time we have interministerial consultations. It's an ongoing process, and as a part of that, if there is a feeling that some changes have to be brought about, recommendations are made. And so far as your other question, whether there will be any change, I think you have to wait for any decision. I mean, I cannot prematurely announce a decision. In any case, as and when the government takes a decision, it will be announced.
And we are given to understand that the decision has been taken, but there's also been another decision that's been taken, gentlemen, so I'm going to ask you to just hold on. It's not just a decision on the abolishing of the FIPB, but also a decision related to cane prices. Let's go across now to my colleague Manisha Gupta. Manisha, this is something the market was expecting, perhaps already factored in. Take us through what sugar companies are telling you about this.
Well, thank you for that, Shireen. Yes, the markets were anticipating this, but the only thing is that it is quite steep, from 230 rupees per quintal in 2016-17 to 255, actually the 10% of an increase that you have seen in FRP. So the only thing that the mills are talking about is that while the government has been increasing FRP, but on the other side, they would want to control the sugar prices, as has the case been, and that doesn't augur so well. Just to give you a sense of the numbers, since 2011, there have been 7 increases in FRP, and the rise really has been to a tune of nearly 96%. In the same time, the sugar prices have gained by only 38%. So while the mills, of course, have to pay higher in sense of the cane prices, the realization is just not there. So the mills really have reiterated the same thing yet again on linking the cane prices to sugar. So the revenue realization is something that they want to keep pushing on to. As of now, the sugar retail prices are at 42 to 43 rupees kg. If the cane prices go higher by that much, the fair price perhaps should be at 45 to 46, but the government's comfort level doesn't go that higher. So that's the only thing that would be a bit of a pain point. And also given the fact that Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, all these states haven't had a very good season because of deficient rain or a drought in a couple of regions as well. So it could be a bit of a pain point for many mills here as well.
Okay, Manisha, hang in there while we get reactions from the sugar industry as well. But let me get back to our panel of experts. Mr. Vinmani, back to you. And you heard our colleague Rituparna Bhuyan taking us through the possible contours of the new mechanism. This business of sectoral regulators, if it's an insurance-related proposal, the IRDA looking at it, pension-related, the PFRDA looking at it, and so on and so forth. Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, today we're talking about, I'll just name one particular deal, HDFC and Max. It doesn't have anything to do in that sense with FDI, but it is the IRDA that's looking at either giving the deal its clearance in its current avatar or asking the two companies to tweak the model in some form or fashion. So do you believe that this business of sectoral regulators signing off makes sense?
So, one must remember that financial sector is a very technical sort of issue. That is why RBI is so important. That's why the various financial regulators have, like SEBI, etc., have had such importance, because there are real economic issues involved in it, what we call externalities, etc. Anyway, we need not go into the technicalities, but I think broadly it's a good idea. I mean, in the finance ministry, even if you occasionally have people who understand the intricacies of financial details, we always ask the regulators for an input. So in some sense, actually that simplifies things if you just move that process into these regulators itself, where for formal purposes the government has to sign off. So basically they would, we talked about recommendation. My friend and colleague just mentioned this issue of recommendation. So in principle it is actually better that the regulator examine everything and give the recommendation, and then the government signs off. So that's the financial sector. Even in other sectors like telecom, again there are a lot of complicated issues. I was a member of the Telecom Regulatory Authority, and again the same thing used to happen. Often the government would seek telecom regulators' advice because there are a lot of complicated technical things. So in all these very technical sort of issues, it is better to decentralize to a regulator. So that is one set of things. In other areas, I already mentioned this whole thing about defense and strategic. Clearly, there has to be a real clear policy, and the Defense Ministry and Home Ministry will jointly deal with it. I am not so concerned. I think the other gentleman had a point with respect to other things like drugs, etc. I think the fear, which I appreciate, is that sometimes some ministers and some secretaries, there's no other way to say it, become obstructionists. So you can randomly have cases where a ministry, either the minister or the secretary is very obstructionist, and then that may have certain problems. But we have to learn to deal with them. I mean, we can't hold up reforms just because of that.
No, we can't. A quick word from you, Mr. Dua, on the sectoral regulator possibility as being the signing off authority when it comes to matters that used to be dealt with by the FIPB.
We might need to change officially the role of the regulators. This will probably need to be put within their purview. That might be a legal requirement, because here they are dealing with a subject which under FIMA, because all FIPB comes under the FIMA provisions, probably that power may not have been given outside the government, because regulators are supposed to be independent of the government. But having said that, I think it's a good move to empower to have only one authority in a particular sector to be dealing with all issues of licensing, including bringing in foreign money. Otherwise, for different aspects of the same case, for one purpose, one would go to the government, then if it's a licensed item, come to the DIPP, and then for money matters like this, go to, or the foreign investment matter, go to yet another ministry. So having the regulators, and we are increasingly having more and more regulators, I think as a concept, it's a good one.
Okay, let me bring back Manisha. Manisha, we've got Abhinash Verma of ISMA joining us now. Over to you.
Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. The Finance Minister confirming the CNBC-TV18 news break. The Cabinet has indeed cleared several proposals. Among them is the scrapping of the FIPB. As we were pointing out, about 11 sectors are still required to come via the government approval route, which means that they require pre-approval. 90% of the foreign direct investment proposals that have been coming in are via the automatic route, where really the FIPB has no role to play. So this further helps in the ease of doing business. Let me bring in our guests who've been patiently waiting by. Mr. Virani, exactly along the lines that we had reported, that the nodal ministry, the line ministry, will take forward now wherever the pre-approval route clearances are required. What did you make of what you heard from the Finance Minister?
So it's basically what we heard from you, that they will try to make this as simple as possible. So I agree with the people who have raised doubts, in the sense that that the investment ministry had an incentive to promote investment. and that may be a little diluted when it goes to the line ministries. We discussed 11. Actually, it's not 90%. They are saying only 5 to 8% was coming through those 11 sectors. So a little bit of apprehension, I think, is warranted, but I'm sure the minister is well aware of it, the FIPB is well aware of it, and DIPP, and I think they will lay down the rules and regulations to make sure that there is time-bound consideration and there is oversight in one way or another, So I am less apprehensive than either of the other two persons.
Okay. All right, so let me also bring in Rahul Gangal, partner at Roland Berger, because one of the other decisions that has got the Cabinet's approval today is the decision to clear strategic partnership policy in the defense sector. Again, confirming a CNBC-TV18 news break. Rahul, thanks very much for joining us. The Finance Minister there saying that 4 subsectors have now been chosen as part of the strategic partnership policy, and as we've been reporting, it will be one private sector partner that will be allowed in each of the subsectors under the strategic partnership policy. What do you make of it, Rahul?
No, I think it's a great step forward. I think we are creating large-scale players in India who have surety of a revenue line, which was a big challenge earlier. And the good news would be that each of these companies which are selected as the strategic partner for each of the 4 categories will be able to build very viable business cases and will be able to start investing ahead of even the order intake. So work will start on ground much faster. It's good news.
Okay.
And globally, it's a relevant model. This is how the business operates globally.
Yeah, because, there was a lot of discussion on whether this business of allowing only one private sector player per subsector was the right approach or not. You're saying that this is the globally accepted model and the best way forward.
See, well, the number could be 1, 2, it depends. In the US, it's usually 2. The good news is that the government has started with the program. Whether that one partner works or not, only time will tell. I am extremely happy about the fact that the policy is getting implemented.
You're absolutely right. It's been pending for long, and it is finally been given the go-ahead by the Cabinet today. But just for the benefit of our viewers, Rahul, if you could explain the kind of opportunities and potential that the strategic partnership policy opens up for the defense sector in India.
So there are 4 categories. If the first 4 categories, let's take 2 categories. One is submarines and the other is infantry combat vehicles and tanks. Infantry combat vehicles and tanks could be an opportunity, a market opportunity, if you include the 2 major programs, FIPB, FRCB, maybe the upgrades on combat vehicles. It will reach 150,000 crores over the next 10 to 12 years of opportunities. So that's a very sizable number, even if it's split between a government player and a private player. The submarine side of business would be an equivalent number. You're talking of 100,000 crores of potential order line, which is basis just 2 primary contracts, and the demand is for much more. So I think there is great opportunity for whichever is the private sector player which is chosen to operate in that segment to build a very robust business around it.
Okay. So good news coming in for the defense sector as well. Rahul, hang in there. I'll come back to you, but let me bring in a quick comment in from Ajay Dua as well. Mr. Dua, you've heard the Finance Minister confirming what CNBC-TV18 has been reporting, sir. A quick word from you on what you made of what he said and the road ahead.
I think the position enunciated by the Finance Minister after the Cabinet meeting corroborates what the CNBC had been reporting and what we've been discussing. It's fairly clear that the government had taken a call to abolish FIPB when the announcement was included in the budget itself this time in late January. The fact of the matter is that now very little requires government approval. Finance Minister mentioned in terms of value, 5 to 8% or 5 to 9%. Number of cases might be closer to about 15 to 20%, that's my impression, and I talked about it earlier. My concern is equipping the ministries, the 11 ministries or 10 ministries who might be dealing with these items. They have to be now equipped to discharge their functions in a time-bound manner and not refer these matters every time to the Law Ministry or to the Reserve Bank of India, which ultimately has the responsibility of notifying the rules, etc., under FEMA. That, for the time being, there may be a tendency, till they are confident and have equipped themselves in terms of knowledge and skills, but they'll have to learn the job, as they say, running. The finance minister, in his clarification, did clearly say that what is now pending also before the FIPB should actually go back to the ministries concerned. So that means they'll have to start dealing with these cases probably within a few days from now itself, which I think is a good fact. Coming to the concern, my concern is only on the implementation issues, but decision and simplifying it was needed, and the government is going along the right path.
All right, so let me bring in Jayant Patil, the President and Head of Defence and Aerospace at L&T. Mr. Patil, the Indian defence sector has been waiting with bated breath for the government to clear the strategic partnership policy. The cabinet now approving it. The finance minister saying that 4 subsectors have been chosen and 1 private sector participant will be allowed in each of the subsectors. Your first comments on the opportunities that this throws up and what this will mean for a company like yours?
I see this to be an extremely positive move, because what the country otherwise would necessarily import would now come to be made in India. So it fits into that Make in India. It also fits in that there would be, in a real sense, the system integrators created within the country. There are few, but there are not too many who actually could do those kind of complete systems in India. And that's exactly where this policy will take Indian industry to.
Mr. Patil, the fact that only 1 private sector partner will be allowed in each of the subsectors, sir, take me through what you make of that. And also, what will this mean in terms of opportunities? For instance, we were just talking to Rahul Gangal of Roland Berger, and he was talking about an opportunity of between 150,000 crore rupees or more over the next 10 to 12 years in merely the infantry and the tank space. Take us through what the order book could possibly look like.
I see each of these segments would be well above 50 to 60,000 crores, even if we just count 1 program each. And I'm sure over a decade there would be at least 1 repeat. And thereafter, obviously, the people who perform, I'm sure the government is not going to dump them. Because the issue essentially is those, if we go by the past, the people who won't perform. And if they don't perform, government must have a freedom to change them at the end of that decade. So that's exactly where the policy today says that after a decade, we may actually subject you to a competition all over once again. But those who are well performing, I'm sure the government won't like to change them at that stage. So it's a sizable volumes. We are talking of nothing less than 4 segments, not less than 2 lakh crores kind of a scenario. And that's something to be grabbed, in terms of order inflows over next 1.5 to 2 years.
So what will be specifically L&T's opportunities in these 4 subsectors, sir?
I see very clearly that 2 of these, we are absolute matured players in that. I won't say all the 4, but in all the 4 we have something or the other to do. But there are 2 where we have an enormous level of maturity and we create a completely differentiated value add, which is essentially in case of the submarines as well as in case of the armored and the battle tank kind of an arena. Because there's enormous amount of indigenous design and development over the last 3 decades we actually have committed ourselves to. So we obviously have a very differentiated solution. It's a scenario of government actually saying we'll do only 1. Fine, we start with 1 and then we play for the rest at a later date.
So are you hopeful now, sir, that the pending decision on the FICV will also get cleared?
What we understand actually, the FICV is already in the pipeline, and since it's in the pipeline, it will not go the strategic partnership way. Strategic partnership primarily will go in the battle tank area, which is yet to be started. Because any competitive program, government wouldn't like to roll back. It's a fully competitive make kind of a developmental program which is FIPB, which has moved on. It's almost 7 years which has gone on in terms of development. And even the new RFI, or EOI they issued, is now 2 years in the process. Having made decisions and seen that there are 5 Indian companies who have been given, who've been actually bidding for it, I don't see any reason why government would want to roll back an FICV. Certainly a battle tank, a main battle tank is India's need.
I'm not suggesting that they'll roll back the FICV. So we're still waiting for the final decision on the FICV.
Yes,
sir.
We certainly await that decision, and I must say we await this decision right from the last December.
Yes, we have been awaiting that decision from last December. So almost a 2 lakh crore opportunity is what these 4 subsectors in the strategic partnership space for the defense sector open up. Jayant Patil, thanks very much for joining us here, sir, on CNBC-TV18 with your initial reactions on one of the decisions that's been taken. Vivek Gupta, BMR Advisors, still with us. Vivek, FIPB decision taken, the strategic partnership policy for the defense sector being cleared, and a bunch of other decisions also being taken by the government, and the mechanism for the replacement of the FIPB pretty much mirroring what we were talking about, which is the nodal ministry taking things forward. A quick reaction from you. We've lost that line with Vivek. We'll come back to him. But before we start to get wrap-up comments, let me go across to Mr. Virmani. Mr. Virmani, wrap-up comments from you, sir. This coincides with the 3-year anniversary of the government that's coming up on the 26th.
So, along with this FIPB decision, as promised by various officials, I expect further liberalization actually on the FDI. As I said, the trend, the process continues. It's not over yet. We still have 11 sectors, and I think there are still many elements within these sectors which which everybody is learning. I think there were irrational fears of swamping and all that. Gradually they are being overcome. So I expect that actually there will be much more liberalization in the next year or so to kind of complement what has been done on the FIPB.
All right, Vivek, back with us. Vivek, what do you make of the announcement that is now official from the government? And B, the 11 sectors that still require pre-approval from the government, of course, has been talking about further liberalization. Do you believe that we are going to see single brand retail now coming under the automatic route and further tweaking in things like the food retail policy to allow the sale of non-food items as well?
So if I can pick up an analogy from what's happened in the defense sector, I think the government is recognizing the fact that they must support models, and only those models will actually bear fruit where economic feasibility is, where conditions for economic feasibility are provided. That being so, I would expect that multi-brand retail will also be looked at in the same way. Where our bunch of constraining conditions do not operate in a manner that operational feasibility is compromised. So it gives me hope that this government will look at both parts of retail, multi and single brand retail, in a way that economically feasible business models can come into play. Insofar as the whole abolition of the FIPB is concerned, I think I still continue to hold my judgment. I don't applaud it as wholeheartedly as everyone else does. I've been in FIPB and I've grown up in the FIPB arena, and hardly ever has FIPB been an impediment to any of our foreign clients' investment plans. And therefore, I salute the symbolism, but I wait to see how actual implementation will happen with nodal ministries. I think that's an art that the government will have to learn, and with past experience, I don't think it will be the easiest art for the government to learn that.
All right, that is, I think, the word of caution that we must also pay heed to, because as all of our guests have pointed out, that this is in a sense the end of an era. We hope that it will not just be mere symbolism, but the finance minister there talking about the ease of doing business becoming even better. We hope that we do move towards that. But Vivek Gupta, Ajay Dua, Arvind Virmani and Rahul Gangal, Jayant Patil, thanks very much for joining us on the CNBC-TV18 special special show as we decode the implications of the decisions taken by the Cabinet this evening. We've got lots more coming up, so stay right here. We're back in a minute.